But they had asked to have me draw some stuff, and I doodled. The lady I was working with said, I think you should draw comic books. That I realized, like, there's a shtick here. Sin City meets Veggie Tales. Someone beat him, basted him, juiced him, and fried his ass alive. And it just wrote itself.
Hello and welcome back to No Man's Friend. I'm your host, Garrett Van Team, and today I'm here with independent artist J.R. Mounts. J.R., welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Garrett. I appreciate this, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. J.R., real quick, how would you define what you do for the audience?
Weird. Individual, or an acquired taste. How about that?
All right. Well, I mean, the way I came to know you is actually I met you at, I believe it was a Comic-Con. Back in 2015 or 2016. I think what stuck out to me about your stand is that you had a giant pickle in a sort of private detective outfit, and I believe he...
Trench coat, fedora, melon baller.
Yeah, why don't you tell me about that? Because that was a great lead-in to your booth. And
Well, to describe, I have this gigantic 8 by 12 foot banner that has a profile of my fried pickle detective character. He's smoking a corn cob and it's popping popcorn. He's got his fedora down, he's got his melon baller gun up, and it says Fried Pickle Noir, Sin City meets Veggie Tales. And that's pretty much what anybody needs to know if they go, what the hell is what did they do to Rorschach? That kind of thing. So that kind of lets people know whether or not they want to continue, or is it a biohazard sign and they move away. I've actually had people tell me they don't like pickles and then wouldn't crack open a book. I'm like, you don't have to eat it. And if it helps, if you don't like pickles, his life sucks. So, I mean, you want to hear about how bad his life is, just crack the book open.
You can also be like, well, he's technically a cucumber.
Exactly. Well, yeah, they don't stick around long enough for that. The irony does not get to them until they hear the pitch.
Right. I love that that's a bar, though, because, like, once you pass the bar, that's not all there is. You do a whole bunch of things. You've got Scairy Tales, stylized AIR, to mix with fairy tales. And then
it's the not so scary fairy tales, like Calvin and Hobbes and Nightmare Before Christmas type.
I've also seen more recent pictures of your booth, and as it's grown, you sell all sorts of cool independent artwork outside of books as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Fried Pickle Noir. How did you conceptualize the idea, and how long ago did you start putting out the series?
It was back in 2010. I was a musician for many, many, many years, and I was in the whole LA metal era of Los Angeles, California, and I moved years later to Georgia, trying to put bands together, and it just wasn't going to happen. I tried to join bands and I write music and things like that. I just could never get a cohesive group together, and I was working at a vet's office as the front desk check-in guy. And someone said, maybe you should draw some funny art for the Halloween Candy Bowl. Halloween's my favorite time of the year, hands down. I start in September, and I end in October, and I'm trying to get into November. But they had asked to have me draw some stuff, and I doodled. I did album covers and logos and things like that. So I did all these little crazy kids in costumes, all around the Candy Bowl. And apparently they said it kept getting everybody's attention. Like, they'd come in, and they'd have their dog, and like, who did that? So it was one of those things where the lady I was working with said, I think you should draw comic books. And my first reaction was, I'm a musician. I don't draw. Comics, I doodle. That's what I do. And
I'm sorry.
But the more I thought about it.
If you don't mind, how old were you at this time?
I was, I'm 55 now. That was 2010. I was 40. I had just turned 40.
So you hadn't been doing art before that. You'd been doing music.
I had been doing music for most of my career. I started off wanting to do, I wanted to be a Disney artist, and then I wanted to draw for Godzilla, then I wanted to draw Spider-Man. I wanted to do anything that was my favorite, but it was always like, I was always in this little group of little misfit kids that would draw our own stuff, And it just happened to be that I saw Kiss and AC/DC and said, I want to do that instead, so picked up my guitar. That's when Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads and Yngwie Malmsteen was hitting the scene. So I learned all the guitar tricks. But it was the music that was... You could be an artist with all those tricks, but if you don't have a good song, who cares? The greatest soul in the world needs to be in a good song for anybody to hear it. The whole idea was being in a band was to create a story through song. And not just like cock rock. Anybody can write Poison and Rat songs. But if you take that riff and put like Stephen Sondheim lyrics to it, make it about something, well, now everybody takes notice of those songs. And that's kind of where, like, I was stuck at the time. Like, I had tons of songs. I was going to go to Nashville. I went to the Art Institute, and I was going to go to Nashville and join the songwriting groups and write for other people since I couldn't get into a band. But Nashville was very far away, and my wife had just gotten a really good job. And, like, going to Nashville it wasn't practical. So I sucked my thumb, rolled up into a ball, and said, my life is over, you know. And when this whole thing came about drawing for other people or drawing comics, my wife had taken off for a weekend, and I was suffering from the flu or a fever or something, and so I got a big art pad, one of those cheapy ones you get at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and it had 200 pages in it. I still have it. And a pen, right? I figured if I can't come up with something within 200 pages that I like, then I don't have it. I don't have anything. I don't have nothing, you know. So I thought, well, what do I like? You know, what do you like?
And this was you trying to create a character, or
this is me trying to see if I could draw. Again,
okay.
Because I was doodling for myself, but when you're trying to doodle for the public, it's different because it's kind of like performing, right? You can always sing in the bathtub or sing for your friends in the back seat, but when someone puts you on stage, now you realize this is not just screwing around. You got to bring something pleasant to people for them to at least give you their time, because their time is precious. Anybody who spends time with me, their time is precious. So I try not to bore them or, you know, make them regret their time with me. So that's what the book was for, is trying to figure out what can I draw. And eventually I settled on Little Kids and Monsters because I love Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes and Far Side. Yet I love Halloween and Nightmare Before Christmas and The Haunted Mansion. I loved all that stuff. I thought if I could take all my favorite things, I could do it. And I thought, well, I can't draw realistic art. I don't want to draw Spider-Man or Superman, but I could do lumpy and squishy. So I thought comic strips, you know? So I did this thing called the Scairy Tales. It was like a 50s diner style logo, and it was about kids and monsters. They all live in separate worlds. One was sunrise, one was sunset and moonrise were the two towns, separated by one troll bridge, and they would learn to discover one another. It was supposed to be like, I can create anything I want, lumpy and squishy. Who's gonna bust my balls on anatomy when it's like her name is Tarantula, all right? You know,
right?
It's like, what are you gonna tell me she doesn't look like anything? I was like, no, it's my creation.
Yeah. So how many?
I'm
curious. How many pages into your notebook did you get before you found that out?
4.
4. Okay.
Yeah, because once I settled on the style, it's like I was trying to draw these things. I was suffering from a fever, so I was sweating and I was like laying on the ground, and then, you know, just sometimes things cup to you, right? Because have you ever read Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah, I love Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay, it's the best, right? It's the absolute pinnacle of our art. Well, do you remember when he would become Spaceman Spiff?
Yes, those were my favorite bits.
Mine
with those
too.
Like potato-shaped aliens.
The funny thing is, I haven't read Calvin and Hobbes in over 20 years because I didn't want to be influenced by it. Yet I was influenced by it anyway, because I'm starting to draw these zines, right? Where I draw the comic book and I fold it together, staple it down. There's my comic book! Yay, it's a zine! But he was going to break off into this imaginary world where he becomes Cumbersome. I love puns. Love puns. It's an affliction since my grandma.
And this was in Scairy Tales.
It was gonna be in Scairy Tales.
Okay.
That was the whole thing. I didn't know where to take the story. Now I do, you know. But like at the time, it's like, what do I write about? How do I write about? What's our 1, 2, 3 gag? But what do I do 20 strips from now? You know. And I thought, well, I'll waste some time, and he'll pretend to be Cumbersome. It'll be funny because this kid likes puns, so he'll be a fried pickle detective. And I drew one picture, and it was like he kind of had Muppet hands at the time, you know. And I thought Cumbersome, and everybody who I talked about laughed about that character. Cumbersome, Fried Pickle Noir, Sin City Meets Veggie Tales. And I thought, well, maybe I got 2 series. Maybe I got 2. So I developed that book that's in back as a zine, and it just wrote itself. I'm a big Raymond Chandler fan. I love Raymond Chandler. He's like the godfather of noir. People say Dashiell Hammett, but Raymond Chandler has a way with words the way a beat poet,
yes,
sings his poetry to a doom, doom, doom.
Down these mean streets a man must go who is not himself mean. Great quote.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, well, then I'll do Raymond Chandler in kind of like a Muppet Looney Tunes kind of way. But I didn't think of Sin City and Veggie Tales because I love Sin City, but I didn't read or watch Veggie Tales. I didn't care. I just thought it was funny they were like,
it works for the 2-line
vegetables.
pitch.
For people who need an absolute visual, Sin City and Veggie Tales, it works. Every now and then, that 1% out of 99 goes, "Oh, I loved Veggie Tales," and I'm like, no. Sin City and Veggie Tales. It's not about gangster vegetables getting God.
Yeah.
That's not what the thing is. It's mob stories about fruits and vegetables trying to bump each other off mob style in a seedless city called the Pits. So it was all in that little thing that I realized, like, there's a shtick here. I had to work on my elevator pitch in case I ever rode the elevator with Spielberg, But it just took off, because, like, there's a great noir movie called The Raw Deal.
Okay.
So that's why the book is called The Raw Deal. It's the first book. It's a takeoff of The Raw Deal. Because I couldn't think of, I thought, let's take the most famous noir titles and then we'll just riff on the title and then create my own story. The stories are all the same. There I was sitting at midnight and the blonde walked in. It's like it's always the same setup. I was minding my own business and this palooka, comes in and hits me on the shoulder. I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah, it's always about being embroiled in someone else's story.
Yeah, you're always in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
It's always 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. The guy's always getting screwed over. He never realizes he's been had until the end or before it's too late. So I realized, well, this is easy. His name is Cumbersome. Ha ha ha. Fried Pickle Noir. That sounds funny. I thought, wait a minute. His name is Cumbersome, but it's Fried Pickle Noir. Holy crap. There's his story. He was a cucumber. His name is Cumbersome, not Pickle.
Oh, yeah. So his origin would be kind of morbid then.
Right. Someone beat him, basted him, juiced him, and fried his ass alive.
Jesus.
So he was a cucumber detective that became a fried pickle because the mobs tried to execute him. And it just didn't take. It made him basically more hard-boiled. That's why Q doesn't take any shit. Q is basically like my Rorschach. Now, Cumbersome, he was a pretty good cop. But, Cumbersome. But, like, the fried pickle Cumbersome, the PI, the pickled investigator, he's a hard-nosed man because that burning of his life, of his body, of his... It's tremendously painful to live in his skin, which is why he drinks vodka all the time. Not just because it's made from potatoes.
Yeah, I thought that was especially morbid that in your world, the food characters also ingest food items.
Yeah. Well, it's an egregious, or I'm going to make up words, but like he does it because he hates potato heads. It's the potato head mob that basically destroyed his life. So as far as he's concerned, he'll drink vodka until every one of them's dead. Or he dies from vodka. Who knows?
Yeah, you're making me... I love the panel in there of... It's like they're making the vodka and you see just like there's a dead body. They're like shoveling them in.
Now that's... What's fun about it for me is like I can be as morbid and graphic in this thing as I want to be because it's vegetables. Who cares? It's not people. So if they get mutilated, if they get ground up, it's vegetables. So people see the humor in the fact that it's dark humor, but it's noir. I had one guy bought one book, came back the next day, he said, "Holy crap, this is actual noir. I thought this was a joke." He's like, "Well, it is a joke, but it actually follows all the rules of noir." I'm like, "Yeah, because you got to tell a story. Even if you're making a parody, it's got to be a story." So, like when you make a character called the Hellraisin, there better be a damn good reason why he's the Hellraisin. And if you're going to have a Hellraisin, you got to give him great powers because you've created a Hellraisin. So, I have fun creating this stuff. This stuff makes me laugh in my sleep.
Well, let me ask, how many books have you done so far in this series?
I've done 5 books, 1 coloring book, 1 card game, and I theme song. I haven't rolled out the theme song yet. But yeah, I'm writing book 6, and it was supposed to come out years ago, but sales started really declining. So I had to find another way to survive in order to be able to write book 6. So there's the Raw Dill, then Kill Bossa Blanca, and then there's the Dirty Half Dozen where he fights the eggheads run by Salmonella. Then there's Leftovers, a short story book. After that is book 5 is Russet's Revenge, and that kind of is a sequel to the Raw Dill. And then I wrote a coloring book called You're Gonna Need a Lot of Red. And I basically gave out red crayons to anybody who bought the coloring book. It's just bloody. And now I'm writing The Codfather, where he goes up against the Fishhead gangs. These will have an end. I have 9 books total in my mind. It will end with war and peas.
Great.
He goes up against the Nutzis, run by Adolf Nutler.
That's
and
amazing.
Their whole line is, "We are nuts!" Because they're crazy.
So, how have, like, from book 1 to book 6, how has the world and the characters evolved?
You know what? I never get stuck for a pun. I never get stuck for a storyline. I have been able to come up with new characters, new mobs every book. The rules are a new mob boss, a new city, all right, and then. Like, I try not to reuse characters very often because I really want to have this whole thing be huge. You know, like I did a one-panel thing of Starchy and Husk, okay? There's an old 70s cop show called Starsky and Hutch. But if I put a potato guy and a corn cob guy together and make them Starchy and Husk, and they drove, in Starsky and Hutch, they drove a red Gran Torino. They called it the Red Tomato. So, of course, their car's a big red tomato.
Perfect.
You know, they had a guy named Huggy Bear, so he's Huggy Pear.
So these just come naturally to you, just like,
dude,
boom.
They write themselves. You know, I mean, I hate to say, like, I'm not really looking for them, but my meter's always on, right? So I'll always tuck something away. I won't ever use an idea someone's given to me, though. If they go, you know what you should do? You should make him a banana and make him peel. I'm like, that's one thing I would definitely never do. I just make sure I don't use anybody's idea because I want this to be natural. I don't have a problem writing these books.
You say that each one is a new city and a new mob. So is kind of the canonic idea that he goes up against the mob of the city and then has to leave each time?
Well, he's centered in the pits. The pits is a huge, kind of like, think of it like boroughs, all right? So you're in New York, that's the pits. But you got the 5 boroughs. Well, there's the Melting Pot, you know. You've got Wantown, all right, where you got the Asian food groups. You got Tex-Mexico, you know. You got all these places that you can go to, and that's kind of like I like him to travel around in order to figure out, like, something calls him to these areas, right? Like we haven't seen the fish heads in 5 books. Why? Well, he hasn't needed to go to the fish heads. He hasn't needed to go to Marlon Brando's house, you know, to visit the Alba Corleone family, you know? So now we will. And I've got, at some point he goes to Candyland, which I'm not sure how I'm going to dance around that copyright. I might have to call it Candy Town or something like that, but he goes up against a serial killer in the next book. Not this book, book 7, it's going to be, I don't know what's going to call it, but he goes up against a guy who candies all these foods. And, you know, so everybody's getting candied. And that means, like, he kills them and he candies them. So he's called the Candyman.
Oh, wow.
So he goes up against the Candyman. And at one point, the Candyman hires an evil onion called the Grim Gaunt, who basically has an addiction of peeling back his layers. So he's got to wear these special gloves because he keeps peeling his own skin away.
Oh.
In order to, yeah, he always wants to see what's under the next layer. So he takes those layers and he puts them in a special weapon and he shoots people with pieces of his own body. I don't know why. It's just something that came up years ago.
It sounds like something out of The Boys, like showing the monstrosity of powers. Yeah.
Right. Well, and there's an evolution, which I didn't get until book 5. I thought, why do some of them have legs and fingers and toes and eyes and some of them don't? You know? I thought, well, yeah, why is that? Why do potatoes have no legs? but Cumbersome has digits. And it all comes back to how they evolve. It's the more cunning they are, the more intelligent they are, they're more their bodies. You know, like eyes on potatoes? The more their bodies evolve. So there is a potato head gang boss called Russet, and he has legs and fingers, and he's a very cunning guy. So the smarter you are, the more digits you've got. So that's kind of how I worked out that evolution, you know. And
that's so cool that there's an internal mechanic like that you're keeping consistent. That's
and I didn't realize that was the consistency until it hit me in the face. I thought, why does Russet have eyes? And I just thought, well, shit, it's his evolution. I thought, of course it is. And I went back and looked at every book. I thought, well, this guy's stupid, so he doesn't have legs, you know. And all the guys that get bumped off easy, they don't have legs.
Or like in the first book, all the goons are just like the same potato. And
yeah. Well, it's like Reservoir Hot Dogs, right? You know, so all the goon heavies have ties, right? All the mob bosses have, you know, bow ties. So every mob boss has a jacket and a bow tie. It's kind of their MO, right? And you know, all their goons have they're like sunglasses and black ties. So even in like the Dirty Half Dozen, the egghead mobs, all of their shell heads, they have black ties. All their mob bosses, they have dots, they have stripes. They're like Easter eggs, right? So they all have different designs. There's 6 mob bosses because it's the Dirty Half Dozen. There's 6 mob bosses in the egghead, so it's a carton, right? So that's kind of where I get to play with not only puns, but also the evolution of the world and all. But it's got to make sense, right?
Yeah.
So like when you watch The Simpsons, their anatomy has sense. If you draw The Simpsons and you were to cut them open, you could tell where their gallbladder is supposed to be, where their heart's supposed to be. Same thing with like the Fried Pickle Noir group. Everybody's got to have a believable story and a believable anatomy, and everything's got to coincide in a natural way. Someone who just comes into any book has got to realize, like, oh, that's why all the cars have rolling pins, because those are the wheels. They're rolling pin wheels. Of course, they're not tires, they're rolling pins. They're bread baskets. It's big loaves of bread with rolling pins. Of course, you know. Why wouldn't it?
Right.
So,
and even the other props have cohesion and evolution to them. Like his first weapon is called the pea shooter, and then eventually he gets the melon baller.
Right, because he defeated Hater Tot. Of course, because Hater Tot's this huge dude. He's got this giant melon baller, and it shoots giant frozen melon baller. But his pea shooter is good too. It's just not nearly as strong as the melon baller. So, you know, yeah, that's what I like too. Is like every now and then, like I guess in book 5, he discovered the Splatling gun. It's basically a Gatling gun, right? But all the frozen peas come out and it just splatters everybody. It just ruins everybody. So that's called a Splatling gun.
So are the ammo, are the peas like dead characters?
What I've put together is there's seeds, right? Which are seedlings. They can be grown as like child labor. So they're seedlings, right? So you grow them and you go, get to work, kid. There's also ammo that you like. They can actually grow their own, like peas in a pod, right? So they can grow little mini peas. Like, you ever seen the little mini corns?
Yeah.
That's what he's smoking. He's not smoking an actual corn person. He's smoking those little bitty corn cups, those little bitty things. So, but then there's corn cob guys that would never smoke those things. So, and the cucumbers don't hang out with the fried pickle because he's the only fried pickle. He's the only one that's done. He's the only one that's ever survived being pickled and basted and beaten.
Oh, I didn't realize this. So he's a total enigma in his world.
He's a total enigma. That's why he's all alone. That's why he has no family anymore. And the friends he makes is basically the ones he's been on the job. The only person, you know, that knew him beforehand who was in book 2.
So is he considered like severely deformed to the cucumber people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's kind of like, all right, take it like Deadpool, right? He takes his mask off. He's disgusting, you know, and nobody looks like him. That was just how he mutated. Same thing with Cumbersome. He basically got boiled and fried alive, and this is how his body mutated. The casing around his body protects him now. It's like, kind of like it deadens some of his nerves so he can take a lot of pain. But he can also dish out a lot of pain, too. He can keep going and not realize he broke his own knuckles. That's why he's very formidable. But at the same time, he gets the shit kicked out of him quite a bit.
Well, what does drive Cumbersome, since he doesn't have family and he's got a very dark backstory? What does he want?
He wants revenge, and at first he wants revenge because they took me away from my family. He thought that his wife was murdered, so it's obviously revenge is his big thing. But eventually it becomes, well, I'm good at this. This is my justice. I've made some friends, and these people need protecting from this guy I hate the most, who ruined my life, who ruined me. Until that guy's dead, I got no business dying. So, I won't give up until this guy's taken care of.
Does he eventually get that revenge?
I haven't been there yet. Book 9 is where I end it all.
Okay, so it's going to come full circle.
Yeah. Book 9 is where I basically ask, all right, what's left? I remember someone saying, like, you know what you should do? The 5 words I hear more than anything else. Not like, do you want to have sex? It's like, you know what you should do? It's like, somebody said, like, you should wake up in the last book, on the last page, it's been a salad the entire time.
Oh, fuck that. No.
All right, first of all, it's stupid. One, it's obvious. 2, it's not clever at all. I mean, a fever dream? That's so stupid. It was a salad all along?
The dream of a salad. Or like the characters having a fever dream of a salad? No, right. That's dumb.
No.
And that invalidates the whole journey. That
exactly.
That ruins.
Yeah.
I hate those endings.
It gives you no reason to come back and reread them. So I've always thought, no. This is a world. And Cumbersome's story will end at some point. And how we're going to end, I don't know. Do I want him to have a revenge? Absolutely. The 80s kid in me who's got to have balance. I love Jason and Michael and Freddy, but they must die, okay? So Cumbersome's got to have justice, but I got to make him hurt all along the way. I got to give him some joy, but then I got to take it away from him at some point too. So the other justice is like he was in love before he was disfigured. And so he is a man who is capable of love. He's a man. He's a pickle who's capable of love. So I want that journey to mean something. Like, I don't want him just to be like this badass for no reason. So, someone close to him gets killed. I want there to be a reason for it. I had one dude come up to me say that he cried in one of my books because he's like, I was laughing, and then you killed the guy. And he's like, I miss him. He's like, I actually cried when he died. And like,
that's got to feel great.
I wrote it that way. Like, I was sad killing this dude, right? But I realized it had to happen. But it makes me feel good because, yes, it is about jokes, but they're also about real people. I mean, again, Calvin Hobbes, right? Do you remember the episode where they find the wounded raccoon? They're camping, right? And they find this wounded raccoon. They don't know what it is, but Dad sees. He's like, "Oh, son, I need you to go inside."
Okay.
And the raccoon's gonna die, so they have to put it to sleep. And the whole episode is about realizing death for the first time. And it's poignant. It's so adorable. It is funny, but it's so sad because you're like, they don't want it to die. We don't want it to die. But that was the Calvin Hobbes moment. That's where I'm trying to inject this series with some stuff where people go, holy shit, this pickle's kicking some major ass. I love this. This guy's a badass. I want to be a pickle now, Or like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that to him. Why? Why would you? Why? But everything's got to happen for a reason, right? I kill off a character because I realized, one, somebody had to die. And it had to be somebody important. But it allowed me to realize in the next book, well, now what do I do? What do I do with this character? I thought, oh. So I've created a new character, a new version of the same character. And I thought, well, now I'm having the time of my life with this guy. And so I think somebody who might have called bullshit on this one move will actually enjoy what happens to it after. Because, and again, he's got a turning point too now. Because now, again, I don't want to give this stuff away, but I also don't want to be too cryptic either. I'm just excited that, these ideas happen upon me, and I'm lucky enough to recognize that this is a good beat. This is all right. This is what will keep me writing the next book, And is it 9 because it's 9, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? No, it's just 9 because that's as many ideas as I could come up with. I mean, like, I don't want to force it. You know what I mean?
No, I get that completely.
I know they go up against the Nutzis because the Nutzis is the I mean, what better bad guy can you have than a Nazi, right? Well, same thing with Cumbersome in The Great Escape. It's the Nutzis run by Adolf Nutler, and they're going to put anything that's not a meat product into a concentrated camp. So that's my pinnacle of that book. And I already know what I'm going to do with everybody's story where I'm kind of threading things in, which I didn't even realize these guys needed a story. And I thought, what a great way to end that guy's arc, you know? So
no, and that makes sense too, because it goes from like, you know, local gangs to citywide gangs to like these guys are trying to do a Holocaust. Like,
well, yeah, you know, and everything's bigger, right? So it's like, you know, what any series that keeps going. Have you ever seen Saw 10? My God, you know, like Rocky 3, Rocky 4. What's bigger than Rocky 3? Well, he goes to Russia and he fights the Russian army, you know. So, and then we bring it back down, you know. Well, now what is Rambo about? You know, like, you know, what no, not Rambo. Rocky Balboa, when he becomes later on, like Rocky 6. Rather than Rocky 6, it's Rocky Balboa. He's no longer a prize fighter, but he's running like a restaurant named after his past wife. So how does he help somebody? He helps somebody smaller, and it's a smaller, intimate story. And that what makes me like interested in the evolution of story. It's got to have a reason. So, but if I'm going to have something, if I'm going to end this series, it's going to end big. Like you said,
we still get the street fight, right? Though.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I want between Cumbersome and Killjoy. I want that moment. I want that, you know, that one lamppost street. It's just me. It's just you. Let's end this. You know, after, you know, we've saved the world, and now I'm gonna kick your ass. You know, so that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. And if you do need his 10th book, I'll say your least favorite words. What you should do is they all find God.
Oh yeah, I'll tie it around. Well, they have to because they all die.
Yeah. They're all in some weird heaven. I don't know.
Yeah. We drop the cuke bomb, you know, a cucular bomb, and then it just obliterates everybody. You know,
it's like,
yeah, and then they go to heaven.
Turns out it was the Golden Arches.
That's funny. That's really funny. That's cool. And see, you could write this.
Well, I mean, I love this whole series, and obviously I remembered it for almost a decade after meeting you.
Dude, no kidding, man. Absolutely. Like I commend you, because let me tell you, that means that you made an impression on me too. Because, like, you know, if we talked like I love to talk, that, I mean, my art is my church. You know, if someone wants to talk about, like, I wish I could do this, I'll tell them all the things they could do right now themselves, because what I'm doing is not hard. All it is just focus. That's it. It's focus. It's finishing your work. And I like to lift more people up and tell them that, like, we need more art. Doesn't matter why, doesn't matter what you do, but we need more art. We will always need more art. Not everything has been done like crazy, and if it has been done, still. So create something new now. Something that was gone from a long time ago that no one's got now. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be creating.
I think people would say that the noir genre was dead, but you're adding to it in a new way.
Well, it's a niche, right? So yeah, at one point, noir was all anybody had. They were in the pulps, little dime store fiction novels. You know, they'd go to see, like, you know, Maltese Falcon in the big theater. Noir is very niche now. Now we get neo-noir. Now we get, like, post-apocalyptic noir. We get noir every now and then. We get things with noir elements to them. We just call them drama now. But true noir, like the beat poet, Fedora, you know, John Wick is noir. It's like noir on steroids, you know, but, like, he's a badass, you know, he does impossible things, but he's always trying to get up against these guys that are worse. So that's a very noir concept. You know, he always gets his ass kicked, but he always kicks ass too.
I will point out
it works.
What makes me, I think those movies end up being an unintentional comedy. At the moment you realize that there are no one in the world, there's literally no characters in the world that are not secret assassins. Except, right. I think there's two. There's John Wick's wife, and there's the blind guy's daughter.
That's right.
I literally don't think there's anyone else in the series that they even mention.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
They're like, we control everything. and everyone stops. And it's like, okay, so where is normal New York?
So then the barista pulls out a knife. It's like, oh, really? You were just serving a mocha.
Yeah.
Really? And now you had to stretch before that move, dude. I know you did.
Yeah.
But we give it a pass because it's over the top, right?
Oh, yeah.
So same thing with all art. All art has to be given a pass of some kind. Like, if you do a big red guy with a stone hand and a tail, we think Hellboy, right? But what if he's not? What if he's like Orange Boy, and the color printer went wrong, or anything. Everything's a ripoff of something, or at least a take on. You could say Hellboy is monster noir. He's got the trench coat. He smokes a cigar. His life sucks. He's always going to get some other new villain, and that's huge noir, and it's all tons of blacks too, like black art everywhere and one pop of red,
To your point, I think like a lot of people who maybe want to be artists and then think, well, I don't have any ideas to offer that's new or fresh. I'm pretty sure it's pretty hard to come up with anything in a vacuum. So to your point, Absolutely. It's like that's how we take in information, then our brain twists it around, our subconscious messes with it, maybe we have some crazy dreams, and then we come up with something. Yeah. But of course it's going to be based on something else that we have been exposed to.
Too many people talk themselves down before they've even taken their first shot, and that's the worst thing. We would have, like, no artists, everybody shut themselves down for trying to be 100% original. Because I'll tell you what, 100% original is not interesting. Because it still has to be relatable. Just because it's different, just because it's completely unknown, doesn't make it good. It makes it
I guess that's a good point.
Different.
100% original would be completely alien. That's a really solid insight. I hadn't thought about it quite like that. But yeah.
Well, everything has to be relatable, right? Think of like, why does every monster have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head? Because that's how we relate things to have form. Arms, legs, head, torso, all that stuff. You could take the head and shove it up the ass. You could put 4 tails around and hop around on 1 finger. Wouldn't make any damn sense. It'd be original. but is it original? Because it's still a finger. Originality for originality's sake is not as important as writing a good story or a character or a setting that is not only relatable but interesting and brings up questions. I hate things that I can predetermine where it's going to go. I hate knowing the ending before I've gotten to chapter 2. I hate it. Or 15 minutes in, I already know all the red herrings. And part of it's my age, because, when you read so much, or when you watch so much, or when you hear so much, you start noticing patterns. Like, there's the bad guy. I know it is.
Oh, yeah.
He's not good.
Sometimes you can predict the ending of a movie.
Yeah, it's awful. Or you can tell, oh, I see dead people. Oh, yeah. Done it before. All right. But when it happens for the first time, when you see it for the first time, you're like, oh, I never saw that he was dead before. And then you start going back, you're like, oh, I'm stupid.
That's the one movie I have that I wish I could, like, memory hold the experience of seeing it and then watch it again.
I know, me too.
Because I don't know too many movies where it's like the twist is really everything.
Well, you'd have to go back to something like Memento, right? Where the whole movie is done in reverse.
Right.
He's tattooing. But that's such a mind fuck to do for the entire... I love Christopher Nolan's work from The Prestige. The Prestige has got one hell of an ending, And those moments... And that guy wrote the greatest Batman movie ever. So it's like, those moments are what makes me excited about writing. Like, okay, so there are ways to do intelligent stories. And you just got to take a little bit of time. You can't pander your own idea. And at the same time, I'm always one to like, all right, you know what? So what if they don't get it? If that's your vision, that's your vision. They just don't get it. You'll sell less, of course, but if that's your vision, Terry Gilliam died on a mound of ones, not a mound of like billion-dollar checks.
Yeah,
he died in the ones. But Terry Gilliam made his own stuff.
He's brilliant. I love his movies.
Yeah,
like Baron von Munchausen.
He's out there too.
I love that movie. Just like the way they built the scenes, all practical, and their models, and like when you're inside, I forget, they're inside the stomach of, was it a sea creature or the giant or something?
Yeah.
I'm merging some of his movies, but yeah, like just that shot of like all the masts of the ships holding up the stomach and everything.
It's brilliant.
Oh, it's so cool.
And only he could have come up with that. And here's the thing, it's not the hardest idea to come up with, but what he did with that idea, you could have written that down and like, oh, that sounds cool, but then to expand upon that. His last movie, I don't know if you saw that, because Gilliam's an acquired taste, and sometimes you got to see Gilliam at the right moment. Munchausen and Time Bandits, those are pretty easy. Those are pretty some of his most
Bandits, they blow up the kid at the end. Sorry for the spoiler, but he just blows
Spoiler,
up.
But if you haven't seen this movie from '76, it's too friggin' late.
Yeah. Plus, it has nothing to do with anything. He just blows up at the end.
I know. But that's balls, though, right? Look, whenever I see a new movie and they don't kill a kid or an animal, I call bullshit. Because it's like, all right, you know what? I was 8. I would have been dead. No way would I ever survive that gigantic spider. No fucking way. So don't treat me like I'm stupid.
Or worse, it's all gotten so watered down where it's like Jurassic Park, they survive running with a never before seen, not just a dinosaur, but a genetically mutated
ultimate predator.
And then they laugh like it was the funniest fucking thing they've ever done.
I know.
And it's like, run. He's like 10 feet
you
up.
love those things to a point, right? You love these things to a point, but then you realize, but this has got some bullshit too. You're like, God damn, if they could write a smart one, I wouldn't mind it. But the problem is, especially when you get to something that's making a lot of money, and this goes with fan art as well. When you get to the point where something is working so well that why rock the boat? All you do is rinse and repeat, right? But that's not how you break new ground. That's not how you become a better artist. Test some stuff, That's what my art is always trying to do for myself, is like, yeah, I could draw a bunch of the same shit all the time, but that's not what's interesting. The reason why a couple of my images work is because I didn't know I was drawing that at the time.
There is something, too, and you mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to touch on it, was that there's been a progression, not just in the world building and the characters of your books, but also the actual art. Because you started drawing...
That was not hard. I want people to actually look at these things. The book 1 was written at a time when I was doing the Scairy Tales and doing the fried pickle. The whole reason why I was doing it, though, was just to be artistic. My goal was, if I can get enough done, maybe if this hits, it'll be something that people can draw as fan art, but I'll make it easy. Potato, gun, sunglasses, easy to redo, I wanted things that were simple. That's why in the beginning, the art is so rudimentary. I was a better artist than that, but I wanted it to be rough and almost like early Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles done by a child. I wanted 10 years into this stuff, come 2020, I wanted to do the Dilliversary. I was going to come out with the next book, and I was going to redo the first 2 books that they all look better. I thought, well, if the book 1 looks good, like if it looks like I drew it today, maybe then people would buy 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? But then I realized, that's a lot of work, and at the same time, it's like, they didn't redraw Superman 1. Jim Lee can draw. They didn't redraw Batman 1.
Yeah.
They could. But you look at Jim Lee, he does the best Batman around with Greg Capullo. He does another great Batman. They don't redraw them. They just continuously draw them. So I figured if I made single stories, so like The Codfather, it's its own singular story. There's no backstory to worry about. There is a thread from book 5 going in it, but nothing huge, right? So I thought, all right, if I can at least write good individual stories, people can pick these books up at any time without worrying about chronology. Other than well, why did he turn this? Well, that's in book 3. Well, what happened to this guy? Well, that's in book 2.
Yeah, if you want to know how he got all his scars, then you have to go back. But you don't
pay
need
me more money.
Yeah. But it's true. You don't need to know why he has every scar to get into the new story.
Right.
In my honest opinion, I like that the first book and through the series has a progression of your work as an artist. I think it's cool.
Oh, thanks.
And it's kind of unique because you won't find that in a lot of other people. Like most of the professional Marvel, DC comics, they're hiring pros at the pro level, and that's what goes out from the get-go. So
sure,
it's like...
Sure. Well, they have a lot more fan base to have to worry about, and stockholders.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, I don't know.
My wife.
I think for the core fans, as they progress through it, they'll probably just appreciate that growth as it goes.
I would hope so if I've done my due diligence, because they read well. So I've gotten an opportunity to write the series as a let me get this right, a radio live broadcast, right?
Really?
Yeah, my wife's cousin, she and her husband, they have some interest up in Woodstock, New York, and they're building a facility, a performance facility. And one of the things they talked about doing was taking the Fried Pickle books and turning them into live radio noir dramas. You know, like and now the stories of Cumbersome in Fried Pickle Noir. You know, so it's like,
what would he sound like?
Cool. Q?
Yeah.
He's got, well, his voice is fried, so he's got to sound a little like this, you know, but also it's got to be a beat poet, right? You know, so it's like, you know, I would love to see someone like, I'm gonna forget the names. All right, Lego Batman.
He does the
Will Arnett.
Yes, he does the Reese's commercials too.
I picture Will Arnett. Yes, that's right, Will Arnett, or the guy who does Bob's Burgers and Archer.
Okay. And when I was reading it, I was kind of imagining like a Tom Waits character.
Absolutely. Yeah. That raspiness, right? Yeah, that kind of almost weakness in his voice, but at the same time, he has oomph and presence. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Someone who can like have that bag of tools, right? And bring it to this character, because I would make sure they were very busy.
And not to put more on your plate, but I'd also like a video game of this. I would love to explore open world.
I have ambitions. I've written the Cumbersome theme song. All right, I have written, because I'm a big fan of. Did you ever see the Tick animated series?
Yes, and I've seen the live action show more recently.
I love all iterations of Tick, just because it's just zany ass crap, you know. But what I thought was the most inspired thing in the world was the theme song to the animated series. Zap tweed, zap da tweed out, zap tweed, zap da dude. It was just these guys doing these weird acapella type things to this like big band beat, you know. And or like the old '67 Spider-Man stuff. That's the Pickle to me, you know, like beat poet, music, and that's kind of what I want to do for the Fried Pickle. I want it to sound very, very serious, but old time classic, you know, like big band jazz type stuff from like the late '50s, early '60s. That's what I'm going for. So I wrote it in a fever dream when I applied to DragonCon for the very first time, and I had to wait until like after 2 a.m. to get my response. And when I got my response, it was like a baby being born. It was fantastic.
I wanted to ask you about that because you've been doing the convention circuit, and that's how I met you. How did you get into the convention circuit? How did you decide that as a path?
Much like if you're going to be in a band, right? If you're going to be in a band, you can't play parties all the time, birthday parties and backyard parties. You really want to like play a club. You know, if you want to get to the arenas, if you want to really make some serious money, if you want to get your work out there, you got to start playing clubs, and then you got to get a record deal. Well, as an artist, I don't have a very good online presence, and at the time you had MySpace and Media One, and you had all these little bitty things online that were just kind of taking off, but social media wasn't what it was. So really, the only way to further your art, if you really wanted to stop being in your own vacuum and get out there, you had to go to a show. And you can start small. There's your little local show that's held at the Marriott lobby on a Sunday. You go there, you pay your $25 back then, you know, to sit at a table at 6x2. It feels like the Grand Inquisitor when you're there for the first time. You put your stuff down, the stuff that you work so hard, you staple all your stuff together, you make them all right, and you sit and you wait for 9 hours for no one to buy your shit. Begging that this person might buy. Oh, maybe that person might buy. Oh, this person's coming up to you. Oh, they just want to use the restroom. So you learn how to set up your booth. You learn how to display your product. You learn how to talk about your product.
Am I wrong? Is there... I thought I remember there being a costume of this character as well.
Yeah. In the early days, you know, I got a trench coat. I got a hat. And I made a monkey suit. Basically, I created a fried pickle costume. I got dish glove hands. I learned about latex. And I thought, well, if his hands are all bumpy because he's been fried, well, it's got to be bumpy. So I got, what's it called? I got glue, like builder's glue. Let it dry, you know, and then you paint it, you know, and you add the bumps, and then you get a mask. I got a mask and repurposed it. Basically, took the face, turned it around. And yeah, I walked around as my own pickle character for a few years. It's awful because in order to make it work, you have very small eye holes and a very small mouth hole. And if anybody's ever taken a plastic bag and covered their face over it and given you one little cigarette area worth of breathing, it's claustrophobia inducing, you know. But it was for a reason. I'm like, viva la Q. So I made a melon baller. I had a pea shooter. I had my trench coat, and in 98-degree weather, I walked around Dragon Con for a couple of years as my character.
What was the convention experiences like? And if I could ask, do you have any wild stories of people you either met at these conventions or ran into?
There's one infamous tale that I don't know how true it is, but I want it to be true, because at Dragon Con they said, like, if you ever meet William Shatner, be warned, because he likes to have his handlers, right? He likes to take whoever's going to handle him from room to room. He likes to get them shit-faced drunk in his room and film them. Throwing up.
What?
You know, making asses of themselves. Yeah, he likes to get people. He liked to get people drunk. And there was this one guy. He's like, "Yeah, William Shatner caught me throwing up all over his bathroom, and he just laughed his ass off at me." So, and I thought, well, that's a weird way to get kicks.
Yeah, I don't know if that's endearing or psychotic.
I don't know, but I want it to be true, because I just think, like, there's a man who's so bored because he's just incredibly famous that this is what gets him off. You know, but hey, look. No one put that drink to their mouths. All right, they took it, because you're drinking William Shatner and you got a story. Mm-hmm. The only one that, for myself, because I mostly, for myself, I leave it all at my booth. I get there early. I stay until we close, and I make sure I'm standing and talking to every single person. And then that requires that when I'm done, I got to go to bed right away, because I got to do it again the next day. And if it's Dragon Con, I got to do it for 4 days in a row. And it used to be that my voice would be lost on Sunday, but I was at this show in Tennessee. I'll never forget it. It was called MTAC, and it was my first time there. And I was across a very famous anime guy, and we were just hitting it off, right? And I was doing very well. It was one of my best shows of all time, because, like, you know, I got all this pickle stuff, and this guy's across from me. He's like the most famous animation guy right there, and I'm getting some of his runoff, you know. So they invite me to their rave as the pickle. That was the only caveat. I had to come to the rave dressed up in the pickle costume, and I thought, all right, well, how hard that could be? I'd done it all day, no big deal. I just got to stay up till 1 a.m. All right, fine. So I go, and I had never been to a rave, and let alone on stage at one. It was packed, crazy, juga, everybody. So they're like, now I have to get in my costume. I'm like, all right, you're going to go on in 5 minutes, right? I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're like, oh, just get out there and be you. I'm like, so I don't talk? It's like, no, just get out there and be you. I'm like, well, what does it look like? And I go out there, and there's nothing but go-go dancers. Like scantily clad go-go dancers, okay?
And for our younger audience, what is a go-go dancer?
Go-go dancer, picture someone in a bikini who has been basically, well, I mean, you know, eye candy. You know, they dance on stage with lasers and all this cool stuff. They get a lot of body paint, and they're up there for just, they get everybody dancing. They get everybody going. The music keeps going, so you got go-go dancers up top, keeping everybody dancing. They just keep the party going 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time, hours at a time. And they want me to go on stage with them. And you can't see in this stuff. So they blow all this dry ice, right? And I come out with my gun. And they're all, and now cue Cumbersome. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do? So they walk me to the center of the stage, and they are like, oh, dance, pickle. So I'm like, I got my gun, I got my corn cob that I'm smoking, right? I'm blowing smoke out, and I'm doing all this dancing stuff. I'm shooting people with my gun. I get bumped every now and then. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I don't know what it is. I look down, like, the go-go dancers are grinding on me. So fortunately, I only had to last like 3 to 4 songs. Thank God. I was a sweaty mess. And I vowed never again. that has to be like... That was the most excitement I've ever had.
That's going to be like one of the most memorable nights for some of the people going there. Because they're waking up the next morning with hangovers. They're like, did we dance with a pickle?
Yeah. I had a couple of guys that came up to the next day and they said, man, we did a lot of ecstasy. We thought that was a not fever dream. They said, we thought you were a hallucination, man. Because, like, there's this giant pickle dancing with these girls in a bikini, and they just thought it was funny. Mm-hmm. And then there it is. I come back, and there's my pickle guy. I'd put him on a mannequin, right? So they're all, oh, my God, it's that dude. So that was funny. That was funny to me. But I also I vowed never to do that again because I missed a lot of sleep that day.
Did it help you sell any books?
No, that's the other reason. Like, it didn't help me sell anything because the people who go to the rave don't go to Artist Alley. They're there to visit, like, the guys who did all the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, or they're going to get their Pokemon cards. They're not coming to see a dude like me, and that's kind of the problem with being an independent. You're not, no matter what show you go to, I don't care where they put you, no one's coming to see you because you are not famous. So why do you keep going? How do you compete? You know, what's your ammunition? You know, and a lot of it is that I have to create something that is so. I have to be a bug light. Okay, I have to be like that flame that moths go, what the hell is this? So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, because they're there to see Brent Spiner. They're there to see, you know, the bones of Leonard Nimoy.
I've only met two people at a Comic-Con once. It was the same one I met you at. And I forget his name, but he's from Indiana Jones and Sliders. You know what I'm talking about? He's
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He did something so cool. This kid ran up to him and started asking him questions about Indy because he was like, "You're actually him," and he went into character and got down on his level and told him what him and Indy had been up to over the summer or whatever. And it was just this
that's fantastic,
genuinely magical moment. And it was funny because I wasn't in his line. I was in the line next to his to meet Brent Spiner. And sure. Brent Spiner was a dick to me. It was the same weekend as the release of the second Independence Day. And I had asked him about it. And the second I asked, he was just like, yeah, whatever. I don't want to talk to you. Yeah, thanks. I was just like,
please leave.
And I was like, what? And then I saw the movie. And then I was like, oh,
yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. Well, you paid your money, but you weren't guaranteed a good time.
True.
You were guaranteed to see him and talk to him for sure. You were not guaranteed a good moment.
And you know what? I should have expected it.
But you do have a story.
He played Data. It's not like he was the most emotional character.
Well, that's true. I'll never forget his moment on, like, Big Bang Theory where he goes, hey, yeah, it's my character. Yeah. And he just rips it.
I haven't seen one of these in years.
Remember we used to do this and make them look like they're beaten off, you know.
No, I've seen so much of him from people's videos and stuff on the circuits, and like that. He just seems like a very pleasant person to meet. I had to ask the worst question at the worst time.
I've gotten a couple moments like that where I know they say never meet your heroes, and I'm definitely in that category. Like, don't expect anything from your heroes. Meet them, but understand that's their only guarantee is that you are paying to actually just look at them or have a moment. You're not guaranteed to have a wonderful time, but if you can have a good time, that's awesome. But sometimes you have a bad time, and that sucks because it takes a while to undo that. Neal Adams was that for me. He had a bad day one day, and I knew he had a bad day, and I knew that's why he was taking it out on me. But I swore to God I would make sure that was not my last memory of him. You know, so when I started doing shows as a vendor.
Wait, what happened? What was the bad day?
He was at DragonCon, and he was in a little 2x4 table in the old where we used to have the artist alley, or not? I say artist alley, the vendor hall. So he was in a small area. It was cramped. It was hot. No one was coming up to him. This is my second trip seeing him that day. He wasn't charging for autographs at first, right? Then I come back for another autograph, and he's charging. I'm like, oh, that's fine, you know. But I've bought a book of his work he didn't know anybody put out. And he's like, where'd you get that? I'm like, bookstore. He's like, what bookstore? You know, this whole thing, he hadn't been told this thing was released. Now he's signing something that he's probably not getting paid money for. That was the deal.
Oh.
So, you know, I'm like, oh, and I realized that was going on. He's like, oh, when did this come out? He's looking at the trademark and all that stuff. So he signs it, right? And I always make sure he signs it to me. I'm like, because this is for me. This is not for me reselling things.
Right, and for those who don't
So I
know,
said-
those are like scalpers who come in with a bunch of shit and they get it all signed
Right.
and then they're turning it right back around and selling it. It's very disingenuous.
That's why when an artist says like, "Oh, who should I sign it to?" and they go, "Nobody." Like, well, okay, all right, you rat bastard. I know what you're doing. eBay tomorrow. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always, when I had Neal, he's signing it and he's begrudging. And I'm like, "So are you having a good time?" He gives me this total steel fake smile. Don't I look it? And it just like he goes back to signing it, throws my book at me. I'm like, "Oh, that sucks." I wanted to make sure he didn't say asshole in my book, Fortunately, he didn't. But not too many years later, about 2 years later, and for the next 4 years until he died, I made sure that whenever I was at a show with him, I would talk to him as an equal, right? Hey, Neal, how's it going, man? How's your show? He'd turn like, who the hell's calling my name? What do you want? He's like, just making that money, son, making that money. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the next show I'd say, hey, Neal, you still making that money? He's like, you know it, son, making that money, And I'd walk by and go, hey, did you make that money today? He's like, oh, of course I made that money. I'm Neal fucking Adams. I'm like, yeah, you're Neal fucking Adams. And he'd go, did I ever tell you that story about when I had to say I'm Neal fucking Adams? I'm like, oh my God, he thinks we're buddies. Like now he's seen me so many times he doesn't know me, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, did I ever tell you that time? Like, that was a good moment because, like, I hear Neal, or whose favorite subject is himself, right? He's talking about Neal when I had to say, I'm Neal fucking Adams, right? Well, okay, well, you are Neal fucking Adams.
Well, that's actually a wonderful place to end. We're right at our time. And JR,
Oh, excellent.
man, I appreciate you coming on. This has been such a fun conversation.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Well, I really love that we got to really explore the world of fried pickle noir, and then we got to go through convention life. This is such a cool experience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, this is our life, and I think a lot of independents would really enjoy these kind of moments, knowing that they're not the only ones out there, So I appreciate the time, man. I really do.